There's going old school and there's going old school. Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon. When I played this on my stream, I swore that this was like a spin-off that came out later of Bloodstained. I still feel comfortable calling it a spin-off. I guess technically it came first. It was released first. But like Bloodstained was the main game. This is subsidiary to that. But I've talked about Bloodstained before, I'm pretty sure. And I enjoyed that quite a bit. That was a Metroidvania game, obviously Castlevania inspired because of the creator behind it. And that was very much leaping off of things like Castlevania Symphony of the Night and Aria of Sorrow and things of that nature. This is straight up Castlevania on the NES. I think specifically it's mostly pulling from Castlevania 3. And boy, does it commit to that. Now, my recommendation is either if you weren't playing NES games back in the day, or if you're like me and you were, but while you can appreciate how difficult things used to be back in the day, you don't actually feel nostalgic to just be beaten up that much and have that hard a time. There is an easier mode in this that gives you unlimited lives. And it'll still be a challenge regardless, but I'll tell you, I was so glad I picked that, because when I was playing through this and just... if I'd left it at default settings where I would have been knocked back from being hit, and I still took damage, but there's knockback, but you can turn it off, and there's unlimited lives, but you can also set it to a limited number of lives. And if I'd left those two things on, I would not have gotten far, because knockback would have put me into a pit, and yeah, pits are instant death, regardless of how much health you have. All right, but let me actually talk about what this is. So this is, as I said, very much an NES Castlevania game, right down to the fact that you cannot redirect your jump in midair. Once you jump, you are committed to that. So if you miscalculated or something has just spawned or put itself into a position where you're going to land on it and take damage, tough. That's just what's going to happen now. Like, that's the level of old school it is. And it's so committed that, like, even the characters have, like, the slightly lighter outline around the sprites that you'd get in darker color palette NES games like the Castlevania games. And you eventually acquire, it doesn't take too long, 4 characters that you're able to switch between. And... each of them has a somewhat different set of skills. They have a different base attack that they use, but they also get access to different alternate attacks that in Castlevania fashion you find as you work your way through the level. And these are all characters who are in Bloodstained, the game proper. So if you have already played that, you're kind of familiar with these characters, which is good, because this also kind of takes its cues from the NES in the sense that there's not a lot of dialogue or exposition, because, back in the day, the more dialogue boxes you had, the more memory that ate up and the less you could do elsewhere. So, the dialogue boxes, they're pretty quick. They have a stiltedness to them that I'm going to choose to decide was deliberate as an evocation of, very dryly translated material. So this is not really going to explain a lot. It's here for you to have a traditional NES Castlevania experience. And if you want that, either to re-experience or because, honestly, you never really did back in the day. That's not to say I never played Castlevania. I did a little bit, but I never owned it. So, like, at some friends' houses or whatnot, I tried it out, but it was one of those games that I always died on pretty quickly. It was games like that, or Ninja Gaiden was another one that I never had, but I played a little bit and was like, this is real hard. And then I never owned it. But, if you want that taste of nostalgia, either for this kind of thing very specifically or just this era of gaming, it captures it really well. But at the same time, while doing it in a way that the NES couldn't actually have pulled off. Because while it sticks to the color palette and sprite work pretty well, it is also doing a few things that, like, the NES couldn't have done that, but not so blatant that it breaks the illusion. It's just, if you're paying attention and or you were actually there at the time and remember how limited a lot of that stuff was, yeah, okay, some of this stuff particularly with the boss fights. Yeah, the NES couldn't handle that, but it's still real cool to experience. That having been said, they did a lot of small touches that I appreciate. There's sprite flicker in this, and I guarantee you it doesn't need to be there. If you're not aware, back in the day, you'd get sprite flicker to avoid the game slowing down from having too many assets on screen at the same time. You'd have the sprites flicker so that it's eating up less memory because it's not having to display them for every frame. So it actually has sprite flicker in this, which it doesn't need, but is just there for the aesthetic, and it's just kind of adorable. It's not very long, especially if you play it the easy way. I'll just say what it is. If you play it easy mode and you don't take knockback and you get unlimited lives, I finished this in about 2.5 hours. Like, I got to the last boss while streaming it on Twitch, and I played a little extra session on my own afterwards just to beat the final boss and confirm that it was the final boss. It was. So there isn't a ton to this if you're not here for the challenge of beating it with the kinds of restrictions that you couldn't turn off back on the old NES days. So unless you're here to really prove to yourself that you've still got it and you want to play through it with limited lives and the knockback and that stuff, then you're probably going to top out at about 3 hours at the most playing this game. And I think if you can get it at the right price, ideally on sale, that's how I bought it. I bought it on summer sale. Then it's worth that. Again, especially if you have nostalgia, even just for the era, if not this particular kind of game from the NES in particular. I had fun with it. Will I ever think about it again? Probably not unless somebody brings it up. I'm more liable when I think about Bloodstained to think about the main game. I spent way longer on that and felt like I got a lot more out of it, but this was still fun. This was still a good time, and if you don't have the nostalgia, I'm not sure it's something I'd highly recommend. Like, there are some nostalgically designed games that I think even newbies could get a lot out of, something like Shovel Knight. I'm not sure I'd say that about this because some of it is like inconveniences of the era, like the thing with the jumping, like how you can't redirect mid-jump. For players now, that's a quality of life thing. I get why they brought it back because it is really committing you to be certain about what moves it is you're doing as opposed to just sort of jumping all over the place and assuming you'll be fine, because no, you won't be. And it was just a design choice of the era, but they bring it back here, and it's something that I think if you aren't from that point in time, you're probably going to find irritating. But in any case, I think that's about all I've got. I don't have a ton to say about this because there isn't that much to it. It's a nostalgia trip, and a pretty good one. Curse of the Moon, Bloodstained. What are your thoughts on this? Have you played it? What did you think about it? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. They all help me out. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zumila Fulla, Goddess Elida, Trista Ashley, Oliver B., Melissa Peterson, Tarak, The Thing That Goes Joined to the Anime, Jean Foray, Movie Turtle, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Linda Walters, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernambulax the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperol, Dave Hall, White Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Pal Barabajoggle, Lucy Wood, Dorm Mayhew, and Mary G. Thank you for your support, and consider supporting me as well on Patreon.